Hey everybody, welcome back to the Indie Music Channel. To the 170 subscribers, I hope you all are having a fantastic day. Thank you for subscribing, by the way. It still blows my mind every single time I record a new episode. I can't believe it. And to all of you guests who are new here and you're just listening in, welcome. This is a channel where we talk about indie music, especially amongst the 2000s and onward, but we do hit some history as well, but it was a big part of my childhood. I enjoy talking about it. And this week's episode is very near and dear to my heart because the movie that I'm talking about, even though we're talking about the artist as well that's behind the soundtrack, but this movie is actually my favorite movie of all time. And I just so happened to watch it recently over this past week. And it inspired me to make this episode. I really wanted to make it. And the soundtrack to me played such an important role in the making of this movie. So the movie is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. It was directed and it starred Ben Stiller, and he was instrumental in picking the actual soundtrack for this movie as well. And this was released in 2013. If you haven't seen this movie, I encourage you to definitely watch the movie, but if anything, just watch the preview for this movie, and if anything, the preview sets up the overall feeling, I believe, of this movie perfectly. But before we get into the actual soundtrack itself, the artist in question, and who we're talking about this week specifically, is Jose Golnzalez. Now, before we get to the movie, let me set up for you really quick who Jose Golnzalez is if you have not listened to him before. He is an indie folk singer-songwriter. And what's interesting is his family, I believe, is from Argentina, and they immigrated to Sweden, where he grew up, which is a big part of what he wrote about. It was a very small town where he grew up, and, obviously he's different than everybody, but to me, that really helped his career, so Jose Golnzalez, like I said before, he was a singer-songwriter. He got busy in the music right away. He grew up with it. Eventually, he went to college for it as well. And his albums did get some listens. His work definitely did get some listens. If you don't know, if you've never listened to one of his songs, they all follow a very similar kind of style and pattern where he's usually playing a solo classical guitar, and he has very soft vocals kind of warming up in the background. And when he sings, whether it's in Spanish or if it's in English, it's very, very quiet and soft, every single time. I love it. He did a lot of covers as well by artists like Joy Division, Born in the USA, which I thought was kind of funny. And then Teardrop by Massive Attack, which is a song I definitely think we got to get to talking about on this channel. But that's kind of where he was coming from. He wrote a lot of covers, which gained a lot of recognition. His solo albums got some recognition. A lot of his songs were picked for television and TV. It seemed like to be played in the background. And it just fit perfectly with him, where he got into the attention of Ben Stiller, who made a huge push for him to make the soundtrack to this film. It's kind of interesting now, kind of pivoting to the actual movie itself. The very first lead single is a Jose Golnzalez song that's called Step Out. And what's interesting is I almost think that wouldn't be my first pick to introduce somebody to Jose Golnzalez, because it's very, very different. It's explosive. The drums kind of just come out of nowhere, and, it just kind of comes to this soaring chorus where when the verses come in, it kind of goes back to his style, but it just wouldn't be um, a song that, again, I would say like, oh yeah, this is your essential Jose Gonzalez song, or your typical one. No, I would say it's very different, but he recorded a lot of kind of the scene breaks, where it shows the main character, Walter Mitty, walking from one place to another, or if they're pivoting scenes to another scene. He played a lot of that. You'll notice in the movie, a lot of it is his soft kind of humming and guitar playing, kind of playing in the background. But another pivotal song to this movie is not from Jose Gonzalez. It's going to be a band that we are definitely going to be featuring very soon on this channel, but an Icelandic band called Of Monsters and Men, and specifically their song Dirty Paws, which was the song that is featured for the previews for this movie. That is another main single that came out. Junip, which is a Jose Gonzalez band, was also featured on this album, on the soundtrack, I should say. Another one to really kind of pinpoint here is one that was done by our last video that we just did, and that is Arcade Fire, Wake Up, which to me is a pivotal part of this movie. That's where the main character, not to give too many spoilers if you haven't seen it before, but that's where he decides to kind of leave the comfort of his home. If anything, it fits the scene perfectly because it's almost like he does wake up from his daily routine and decides, hey, I want to, kind of step out and start doing something for myself from his daydreams. And that moment is where, he leaves America for the first time. He goes to Greenland. What's funny is the song Don't You Want Me is sung by a drunk helicopter pilot, but it's covered by a band called Bahamas on the soundtrack. Now, what's really interesting is in this movie, again, we're kind of leaving Jose Gonzalez for a second here, but there is a scene in this movie where they play the song Space Oddity by David Bowie. But Kristen Wiig, who is the love interest in this film, she sings the song along with him. He of course, was not able to contribute very much to this other than, saying it was okay for them to use this song. But Kristen Wiig sings part of the verse and the chorus in this song. And this is another pivotal part of this movie, is Walter Mitty decides again to go on a dangerous kind of quest. Again, he's not used to doing this, but he decides to jump into a helicopter, taking him to a ship that's offshore in the ocean. It's just a perfect song. It wouldn't be one that you would really expect, but he uses that song in that scene. I think it fits it perfectly. And then one other song to really check out, again, this isn't Jose Gonzalez, but Rogue Wave is the band, and Lake Michigan is the song. And this is where Walter Mitty is trying to find the photographer in this film, and he ends up in the Himalayas, and this song starts playing in the background. So you got to check out that song as well. And we're going to go back to Jose Gonzalez now. The very last song of this album and of the movie is a song called Stay Alive by Jose Gonzalez. It's such a beautiful song, and it fits the movie perfectly. It's just a soft clock ticking, and then very light piano and guitar starts playing with his kind of haunting voice cutting in. And the lyrics to that song is about, just kind of enduring the day-to-day monotony, or if your life isn't going the way that you expect it to, stay alive, just keep going. It's just a beautiful song, very underappreciated, I think, just because you have so many heavy hitters like I mentioned before, you have David Bowie, you have Arcade Fire, you have Of Monsters and Men, in the soundtrack. But definitely a sleeper pick if you haven't listened to it before. And that's it. Jose Gonzalez, as a musician, is a wonderful musician. He has side projects. He's been going since 2003. And definitely, if you haven't listened to him before, I highly recommend you to listen to this soundtrack first, if you haven't listened to him before. And then listen to his 2015 album, Vestiges and Claws. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but listen to that album as well. And then I featured a couple of the songs for this album. If you want to check this album out, but please check out the movie if you haven't watched it before. I watched it in theaters 3 times, and then when it came out on DVD, I immediately bought it, watched it, like tens, probably hundreds of times at this point. You got to watch it. It's a beautiful film. But that's all I got for this week. Check out Jose Gonzalez. Check out The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. And I will talk to you all next time.